They say you need 5 years to really be able to look at what an NHL draft class is, so let's take a look at the 2020 Blue Jackets draft class.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. I forgot what they were for a second. It's fine. We're doing great here at Locked On Blue Jackets. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day, every single day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know, before we get started here, that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So, I was going to do a free agency episode today, or I was going to talk about another free agent that I think the Blue Jackets could/should go after. And then I thought about it, and I was like, no, let's do that tomorrow. Because today I want to talk about the 2020 draft class, because obviously, like I said in the open, you really need, 5 years before you know what you're getting for a draft, right? Like, you could look at the 2024 draft, for example, and be like, oh, well, so-and-so had 2 good seasons, or 1 good season, really. Yeah, literally 1 good season, but that doesn't define a draft class. You really need 5 years. Players in that draft class are, 22, 23 now, 24 in some cases, and we did this last year for the 2019 draft. We did it the year before for the 2018 draft, and it was kind of fun to do. The 2019 draft was not a particularly stunning one, but the 2020 draft we're starting to see kind of the returns from that draft, right? Obviously, it is the last draft of the quote-unquote playoffs era for the Blue Jackets. So obviously they drafted Pierre-Luc Dubois in 2016, I believe that was, where they made the playoffs for the first time in a billion years. 4 years, it's fine. 3 years. I can do math. So that was the 2016 draft. He was the 3rd overall, and that was, the last time in a while the Blue Jackets drafted kind of even in the top 10, right? The 2017 draft was, they didn't have a first round pick. 2018 draft, they picked 18th. The 2019 draft was the one where they sold everyone. So they only had 2 4th rounds and a 7th round pick, which, they got Dmitry Voronkov in the 4th round. So that's looking pretty okay right now. And then obviously the 2020 draft, we'll talk about him in a minute. Yegor Chinakhov, they drafted 21st overall, right? So that's kind of the last. Those 4 drafts were the ones where they didn't really have the lottery picks, right? And obviously you get into 2021, you got 5th overall, 12th overall, 2022, 6th overall, 12th overall. Obviously 2023 was 3rd overall, 2024, 4th overall. Hopefully, well, obviously next season, or the draft that's coming up, the Blue Jackets are picking, 14th overall, 14th and 20th. So, they're getting back into that kind of mid-round range, or that mid-range round. But I want to talk about this draft because it's really the last one where they don't have what I would call a draft pick that you need to be a home run, right? I was going to hit and run. That's something completely different. But if you're drafting in the top 10, you need that pick to hit, right? Arguably, if you're drafting in the first round at all, you need that pick to hit. But I feel like once you get out of the top 10, maybe the top 15, there's a little bit of leeway with, A, when your players are expected to be ready, and B, what you get from those players, right? And I've talked about it a lot. I've done a lot of draft coverage on this show because the Blue Jackets have been miserable basically as long as I've been doing this show, right? I started the podcast on August of 2020 when they were in the bubble against the Maple Leafs. Obviously, they won that series. They then lost to Tampa Bay in 5 games, I think. And since then, it's been mostly misery. So I've done a lot of talk about, the draft is the draft, right? And this was the first draft that I covered back in the day. And obviously, the Blue Jackets decided they didn't want to make it easy for me with Yegor Chinakhov. But the point that I'm making here is, before I get too distracted and immediately just start talking about Yegor Chinakhov, 21st overall is not like a sure thing, right? And I think a lot of people think that a first round pick has to be like an elite top line player. But for me, really, that's not, I don't know, you need to have a little bit, you need to temper your expectations, let's say, right? Like looking at the first round picks that the Blue Jackets have had in the past, and honestly, looking at the 2020 draft overall, it was a weak draft. It was a not necessarily like a COVID draft. Obviously, it happened the first, that was the first draft that was impacted by COVID. But that was the draft that the season finished halfway through, right? The next draft, the 2021 draft, was also really weird because a bunch of teams just didn't play, right? But the 2020 draft was a pretty weak draft, I think. Like, obviously, there are some players in this draft that have turned into really, really, really good players. Tim Stützle, for example, went 3rd overall. Lucas Raymond, 4th overall. Jake Sanderson, 5th overall. That was the draft where Yaroslav Askarov went 11th overall, which I believe is the highest drafted goalie since then. Like, no one has been drafted higher than that since Askarov. So, there were some good players taken in this draft. But it's not like I'm not looking at this and being like, wow, okay, there's, I look at the 2021 draft and I'm like, man, this could be like, this is going to be a really, really good draft. Like, it's going to look at like a really good draft in like 3 years, probably. This looks like a fine draft, right? But I'm looking and like, even looking at the players that were drafted after Yegor Chinakhov, like I'm in the first round anyway. Like, there's no one here that I'm like, man, I really wish we'd taken this guy instead of Chinakhov, right? Gets into the second round, and there's still a lot of like, oh well, we could have taken this guy, we could have taken this guy. Like JJ Peterka was a second round draft pick. But even then, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, there's not like Brock Faber, second round draft pick, has turned into a really, really good defenseman for the Minnesota Wild. Like, that potentially is someone that I would have liked the Blue Jackets to take. But hindsight is 2020, as they say. This is not like the be all and end all of draft, right? So even when you look at the like first round picks that were taken in this draft. Oh, Seth Jarvis that I missed when I was scrolling through, right? But like, I think a lot of people assume that a first round pick has to be like an elite top line player. But I'm looking through it, I'm like, okay, well, Tim Stützle is a top line player. Like, Lucas Raymond is a top line player. Jake Sanderson is a top 2 defenseman on the Ottawa Senators. Marco Rossi has really come into his own. Yaroslav Askarov should be a starting goalie. Seth Jarvis, top line forward. Caden Gooley, arguably a top 2 defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens. And like, for the first round, that's about it. There are some players that I like in this. I think Maverick Bourque is going to be fun for the Dallas Stars. I think that Ozzy Weisblatt is not going to amount to, again, he was a first round pick. I don't think he's going to amount to an elite NHL player, but he should be an NHL player, right? So like, what I'm saying here is 21st overall is not necessarily someone that you draft assuming they're going to be an elite game-changing prospect, right? Like, again, once you get out of the top 10 of a lot of drafts, I feel like the drop-off is pretty steep. So I did not come into this looking at Yegor Chinakhov, for example, like, who was the Blue Jackets' first-round pick that year, and like, right, okay, well, they need him to be an absolute can't-miss, bona fide top-line player because they took him in the first round, and that's simply not how it works. However, he was their first-round pick, and at the time, famously at the time, was baffling to many, many people who, like, when you draft someone in the first round and all of the draft analysts that are on, TSN or Sportsnet or ESPN or whatever are like, I don't know who this is, you've gone off the board, right? Because, and Jarmo Kekalainen, just such a Kekalainen pick, right? Maybe the most Kekalainen draft pick of the last, like, of potentially his entire tenure with the Blue Jackets. Just an insane choice. I had to hop on a live show immediately after the pick was taken, and I was like scrabbling to find out stuff about this guy because, again, all I knew was that he was an overager that had really popped his D+1 year technically, and it's gone reasonably well, I think. Obviously, he's had some injury history. Like, he's not popped the way that I think a lot of people thought that he might. He's got a really, really great shot, but I think a lot of people looked at his shot, and were like, well, he should be the sniper on this team. And he shows flashes of that, right? He scored in his draft season, or like his technically his D-1 season. He played 37 games in the MHL, which is like the junior league for the KHL. He had 16 points in 37 games, which does not blow anyone away. The year after that, so the year he was drafted, but before the draft, he played 56 games for the same team in the MHL and had 69 points in 56 games. So he really popped a year after he was drafted. Had 3 points in 2 VHL games. The VHL is basically the AHL, but in Russia. And then the year after that, he jumped up to the KHL. So after he was drafted, he played a season in the KHL with Avangard Omsk. Had 17 points in 32 games, which for I believe, a 20-year-old at the time, a 19, 20-year-old, is pretty good. Had 7 points in 21 playoff games, including 5 goals. And then he came over to North America. And again, I don't think he ever really has like popped, but you see flashes of what I think Kekalainen saw in him, right? And I don't think taking a flyer in the first round, which is not even really a flyer, like this is a pick that you ostensibly need to hit on, but the Blue Jackets were on their 4th year of making the playoffs, 2016, 17, 18, 19, their 5th year of making the playoffs, excuse me. There was hope that they were going to keep going like that, right? Obviously, we know what happened, but I think Kekalainen was like, I can afford to reach a little bit with this pick because hopefully they're going to be picking in approximately the same position next year. So what difference does it make if this one misses? But Chinakhov has been, while not life-changingly good, pretty solid considering he has, I think, struggled at times up and down the lineup. He really struggled in his sophomore season. Struggled a little bit last year, really kind of found himself this year and then got injured. So I want to talk about kind of his time in the NHL a little bit more detailed. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night is delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it is a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live, and they've got player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, so fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? Well, if you have someone that you think might be a sleeper pick and they are going to show up big in the next game, maybe put $5 on it. And if that $5 hits and it's your first bet with FanDuel, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets that you can spend on whatever you want. Are you new to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com. Again, place your first $5 bet. If that wins, you've got $200 in bonus bets that you can spend on whatever you want. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk a little bit more about Yegor Chinakhov. I'm not going to dwell too much on him because I think at this point we know what Chinakhov is, right? But for me, it feels like there's a lot of potential there that is yet untapped. He has, I believe, I had it up, and then again, if you're playing Locked On Blue Jackets Bingo, I had the tab open and then immediately lost it. He's got 71 points in 175 NHL games so far. He's played 5 seasons in those 175 games, which 62 games, then 30 games, 53, and he only played 30 again this season. So, like, he still hasn't played a full season, unless I believe his rookie season was maybe one that was impacted. No, it wasn't. It was the 2021. The 2020-21 season was the second shortened season. So the 21-22 season was a full 82 games. So his career high is 62 games out of 82. So he's never played a full season. Partially, some of this has been due to injury. Partially, some of it has been due to like healthy scratches. But there's an inconsistency in his game or in his ability to play games that I think is probably getting a little bit frustrating. I know last season, the 23-24 season, there was talk that he was going to, request a trade maybe. He wasn't happy in Columbus. He wasn't getting the ice time that he thought he deserved. They seem to have smoothed that out a little bit. This season, he comes in and I thought started really, really strongly. Like he looked great on that line with Monahan and Marchenko, right? I don't have in front of me how many of those points were in the games that he played before he got injured, but I don't believe when he came back. So he played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games coming back from injury and had 1 assist in that. So that's what he had 14 points in the first 21 games before he was injured, playing on that top line. And honestly, I think I'm pretty sure he was concussed. I don't think anyone has ever officially said anything about it, but my guess is that he was concussed. And I think that we saw, even when he was cleared to play, he still didn't look himself, right? Which some of that is on the player to work to get back. Some of that is on the team to maybe not push him. Maybe they cleared him too early. I'm not saying that he was still concussed, but I don't know that he was ready to return to play necessarily, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you've got a guy like Yegor Chinakhov, who's on his 5th NHL season, his 4th NHL season, excuse me, and he's played 175 games, and then you've got, for example, who someone will talk about next year, Cole Sillinger, who is coming up on he's at what 280 NHL games, 286 NHL games, and he's played the same number of seasons, but the difference is he played 79 games, then 64, then 77, and then 66 this season, right? So Cole Sillinger, while he's maybe not putting up the points, is in the lineup and is making strides and is developing. And I think Chinakhov hasn't really had a chance to hit his stride yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays either, but if they're looking to, make a quote-unquote hockey trade, or if they're looking to bring someone in that's under contract and has term on them instead of a free agent, I think Chinakhov is definitely going to be one of the players that is made available for that. And if they can, package a first-round pick and a Chinakhov, and maybe something else to, get a top 4 defenseman that is under contract and is under reasonable contract and is, young enough to grow with the core, I wouldn't be surprised to see Chinakhov on the move. So not Chinakhov is not the most impressive first round pick that the Blue Jackets have in their arsenal right now. Obviously they've picked in the first round, 6 times in the last 4 years? 5 times. 7 times. I can do math. It's going great here at Locked On Blue Jacket. 7 times in the last 4 years, right? So they're not short of first-round picks. Chinakhov is not the most impressive, but he's also not the worst first-round pick that we've seen from them, right? So he's either going to be, for me anyway, he's either a candidate to really pop next season, or he's a candidate to be moved, and again, we'll probably pop somewhere else, and we'll be left sitting here being like, man, the Chinakhov revenge tour is going to be really, really massive. Wish we would have kept him, but nothing you can say about that until it's done, right? But we got a couple of other guys to talk about. We got 4 other guys to talk about actually, which is a big jump from the 3 players that they took in the 2019 draft. They didn't have a second round pick. Their third round pick went walkabouts for some reason that I will try to pull up momentarily. But let's see. The Blue Jackets' second round pick went to the Pittsburgh Penguins, I believe, as a result of... Where is it? Here we go. Went to the Pittsburgh Penguins as a result of a trade that sent Matt Murray to Ottawa. Ottawa previously acquired this pick as part of... it was the Ryan Zingle trade. The Ryan Zingle, Anthony Duclair trade. So that's where the Blue Jackets lost their second round pick. Their third round pick they sent to the Kings. It went to the Kings, but it was from Ottawa as well. That was a pick that went all over the place. So the Blue Jackets originally traded it to Ottawa for Ian Cole. The Ottawa traded it to Toronto, and then Toronto traded it to LA. So that pick took a real walkabout. But the Blue Jackets picked up a third round pick in the Josh Anderson, Max Domi trade. And the player they took with that pick was Samuel Knazko, who is, I think, one of the more underrated young defensemen that this organization has in the pipeline. I don't know that he is a full-time NHL player, maybe a depth guy, but he's been quietly very good for the Monsters for a couple of seasons now. Made his NHL debut not last season, but I think the season before that, when remember that one game that was like Andrew Peak and Eric Gabranson and four guys making their NHL debut. It was like Knazko, Svozil, and Billy Sweezy, and another defenseman. Like there was some insane lineup because everyone was injured. It was near the end of the 22-23 season. But since then, he's had 3 full seasons with the Cleveland Monsters. He had 21 points in 50 games, 12 points in 44, 16 in 55. Has been, again, quietly very good for the Monsters. I don't know, like I said, like maybe, he's a guy that maybe makes a push for a roster spot. They have holes in the roster. I wouldn't be mad about it. He's not as high on my personal depth chart as some of the other guys that played with the Monsters. I'm still really big on Stanislav Svozil, but Knazko is a underrated defenseman, I would say, that is probably not going to change anyone's life on the ice, but bad things rarely happen when Knazko's on the ice, which honestly is sometimes all you can ask out of your defenseman, right? We've seen bad things happen to defensemen on the ice before, right? Like, again, Knazko, not flashy, not going to get a ton done, but I like what I see from him, mostly because I only notice him when there's been a mistake, and I don't notice him a lot. So I'm going to take that as a positive, personally speaking. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, for a third round pick, if you get like if you get a guy that plays like, if he gets a full NHL season even if it's cobbled together over the next 3 or 4 years or whatever, like for a third round pick, that's a win for me. Next up, we're going to talk about a guy that had his kind of breakout moment this season. Their 4th round pick that year was Mikael Pyhhtia, who made his NHL debut around about the same time as Knazko, I believe. He was one of those guys that made it at the end of the 22-23 season. Played 2 games at the end of the year there, came over from Finland, signed his ALC, and again, has been very good for the Monsters. Has played some with the Blue Jackets, played 17 games last season, played 47 games this season, and was a guy that kind of defeated the odds to make this team, right? Obviously, there was holes in the lineup. I was looking, they were looking for someone to fill a 4th line role, right? And we didn't know who that was going to be. And I was like, well, maybe it's going to be, I think Owen Sillinger made a big push. James Malatesta made a big push. And Mikael Pyhhtia, he beats the odds. They end up sending Dylan Gambrell down, who was, a youngish veteran player, let's say, that they brought in again to potentially be a bottom 6 forward. And Mikael Pyhhtia just keeps on beating the odds, right? He doesn't pop as much as I think some people wanted him to, but he had 7 points in 47 games, which, again, for a 23-year-old playing in, essentially his 2nd NHL season, his first proper NHL season, I would say, because I don't consider 17 games a full season. I don't think anyone would, but considering the team needed depth, and I think he stuck in and he did some good work for this team. Now, the thing about Pyhhtia is that he is a goal scorer, and he is a volume shooter, and so he didn't score a ton this season, and I think that's because he wasn't shooting the puck enough, and partially that's because the bottom 6 just don't shoot the puck as much as the top 6, but he's definitely a guy that, again, when he was in the lineup, I was like, this is fine. I feel fine about this. I would take Mikael Pyhhtia over Kevin Labanc any day of the week. Sorry to Kevin Labanc, but it's true, so I'm going to say it, right? So I feel pretty good about again, what you're getting from Mikael Pyhhtia, he's got 66 NHL games under his belt right now for a 4th-round pick. I feel pretty good about that. And again, you look at the guys that were drafted kind of around him. Like, there are only a handful of guys in the 4th round of this draft that even have Wikipedia pages, which that's not obviously the be all and end all, but Dylan Garand, who is the goaltender for Canada at the World Championships right now, he's been extremely good for the Hartford Wolfpack as a goalie. Mitchell Miller, the famously who was drafted and then they renounced him as a pick when they found out that he had been racist as a teenager. And there was a big drama about that. And then, not a lot of other names on this list that are like I like Bogdan Trineyev. He plays for the Hershey Bears at the minute, but again, he's an AHL player, right? Ethan Edwards is probably an AHL player. He's a New Jersey Devils pick. I believe he's a former Wolverine. So that was like, why is this name familiar? But because he played at the University of Michigan. There are names on this list, but Mikael Pyhhtia is, I believe, leading the 4th round in points. I don't know if I can real quick pull up the NHL 2020 entry draft based ranked by points, but my guess is he's probably up there. So in terms of, I believe he's the highest scoring draft pick. There are 4 guys that were drafted after him that have more points than him. I don't have the numbers here right now, but he's top 60, top 70, maybe, in the entire NHL draft of 200 some players with points. So I'm going to go ahead and again say that's a success. Is he going to move the needle? Probably not, but he gives you, he'll give you 14 minutes of ice time. He'll put in a goal every now and again, not as often as you want probably, but I'm really happy with Mikael Pyhhtia's and the way that he's developed as a player, because he was a guy that was kind of vaguely on my radar right up until he made the NHL, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe he should have been more on my radar and also more on everyone else's radar. There's a couple of other guys that I want to get here. Again, no one that's going to break the bank really. A couple of defensemen, one Norwegian and one Swede. So we'll talk about those guys in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We've talked about the fun players, the guys that have made their NHL debuts. Let's talk about a couple of other guys. One guy who has carved out somewhat of a niche, playing a depth role for the Cleveland Monsters, and has mostly been an ECHL player, if I'm being very honest. But Julian Bjorkvik Holm might be the most fun name that was in this draft. It's very fun to say. He's one of the only Norwegian players that has been drafted, I believe. Played in the OHL before getting drafted. Again, has played some AHL hockey, mostly in the ECHL. This season he was in the AHL full-time. Last season he played 57 games in the ECHL, 33 points, which is not bad for a defenseman. But again, he is a depth guy that is going to play like a depth guy. And again, he is a 5th-round pick. He was 145th overall. If that is what you get from a 5th-round pick, is a depth AHL defenseman, I'm fine with that. Again, I think a lot of people think that if a draft pick doesn't make the NHL, that's a failure. But once you get to the 4th round, I would say, if you get a cup of coffee in the NHL as a 4th-round pick, you've beaten the odds. If you get an NHL game as a 5th-round pick or later, you've beaten the odds, right? We talk about it with Trey Fix-Blansky a lot. I know a lot of people are disappointed that he hasn't really been able to stick in the NHL, despite being one of the best players in the AHL. He's a 7th-round pick. Playing any NHL hockey at all, he's already beaten the odds, right? Do I think that Bjorkvik Holm is going to beat the odds? No, probably not. Again, depth defenseman on an AHL team. but he's not like game-breakingly good. He is a depth guy, but when you look at the guys that were drafted around him / after him, like there's no one here like at the end of the 5th round that I'm like, man, they should have grabbed this guy. Again, going into the 6th round, like Matt Rempe was a 6th round draft pick. Neil Zaman was a 6th round draft pick. He's been very good for the Colorado Avalanche. I'm not sitting here saying that I would like to take Matt Rempe over Bjorkvik Holm, just because I think that everyone is collectively kind of over his shtick of be big, hurt people. But like he's gotten into NHL games, right? Rory Kerins has gotten into NHL games for the Calgary Flames. But I'm looking at, like, again, the guys that came after Bjorkvik Holm, and I'm like, no, there's no one here that I'm like, man, they should have definitely, absolutely 100% taken this guy. Except potentially, so they took Devon Levi, or they didn't. The Florida Panthers drafted Devon Levi, 212th overall. That would have been a nice pick, I think. I'm higher on Devon Levi than I think probably a handful of other people are. Would have been fun if they drafted Gunnar Wolf Fontaine, just because he might, again, between him and Bjorkvik Holm, like those are the two most fun names in the draft, right? Like Gunnar Wolf Fontaine versus Julian Bjorkvik Holm. Like those are the two best ones. Those are the two best names. But I'm not sitting here being like, man, I really, really, really wish that they would have drafted this dude that was on the board at the time, right? Because it's the 5th round. Like, you're basically throwing darts at the wall here to see what happens. If they get anything from it, fine. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, if the dart hits the dartboard, it counts, right? And that's to me anyway is what Bjorkvik Holm was they hit the dartboard. The last pick of the draft, the 6th round, they did not have a 7th round pick in this draft because of reasons. The 7th round pick went definitely somewhere. They just flipped it with the Ducks. They traded their 7th round pick they traded their 2020 7th round pick to the Ducks to basically get they sent their 2021 7th round pick to the Ducks to get either a 7th round pick in 2022 or 2023. So basically, they didn't have anyone that wanted to draft in the 7th round, so they thought they would kick the can down the road. And I assume that who they picked was either Martin Rysavy or James Fisher, who were their 7th. Over Keskinen, Tyler Peddle, or James Fisher. I know how to read. I'm doing, again, this podcast has been Jay doesn't know how to read. Also some prospect talk, but mostly Jay doesn't know how to read. So they didn't have a 7th round pick. So they went ahead and they drafted Samuel Johannesen as their last pick. Swedish kid, 5'11", which for a defenseman is kind of small, and hasn't done a ton. He made his AHL debut this season, but not for the Blue Jackets. He was with the Springfield Thunderbirds. He had 32 points in 66 games. Before that, he was with a bunch of different teams in the SHL. Looks like he played for 3 different SHL teams after being drafted before, I assume, signing with the Springfield Thunderbirds as a free agent because the Blue Jackets didn't sign him, I believe. So, again, depth defenseman seemed to do okay in his first year with the Thunderbirds. Did not get any time with the big club, the St. Louis Blues, but never say never, right? Overall, I don't love this draft, but I also don't hate it, right? It was a weird draft. I think everyone was kind of struggling with it. Obviously, they couldn't meet the prospects in person. They couldn't go to the draft. It was done completely virtually. Obviously, all of the seasons ended way earlier than they should have done. So I think that probably had an impact as well, because even if people don't say it, that big postseason performances from players will push them up the rankings. Big under 18 performances will push them up the rankings. Like Yuri Slavkovsky had a monstrous Olympics tournament, and that rocketed him up the rankings to where he went first overall. You know, we're not going to get into a debate about whether he should have gone first overall, because that's not what this podcast is about. But things like that screw with the draft rankings, and they screw with the draft, you know? So the Blue Jackets got an NHL player, maybe two, out of this draft. I'm not mad about it. Again, there's no one in this draft that I'm like, man, I really wish that we'd pick this guy or this guy or this guy. Like, there's no one off the top of my head anyway that it would have been like that they should have picked up, that they had a pick for, right? So like, obviously there were guys there, and again, like JJ Peterka, I've mentioned as a guy that I would have liked to take in the first round. I would have liked to take Brock Faber in the first round if he'd been, you know, on their radar. They went with Chinakhov, that's fine. But I'm looking here and I'm like, okay, well, there's no one really that like, oh, I wish that we could have taken this guy with the second round pick or this guy with the third round pick. Like, one guy that I have really liked is Alex Laferriere, who is not Alex Lafreniere. Alex Laferriere is the Wish.com version. No, that's me. He plays for the Los Angeles Kings. He has solidified his game this season as a top six forward. He is in a very similar kind of position to Chinakhov, I think. So he's played 158 games and has 65 points. Chinakhov, 175 games, 71 points. So he's basically at the same place, but he was taken 83rd overall, whereas Chinakhov was taken 21st overall. So like, if they'd maybe swung on Laferriere for their second round pick, or they didn't have a second round pick, did they? They had their third round pick, which was Knazko, who was 5 picks before Laferriere. So like, again, we're really just kind of splitting hairs here. Hindsight is 2020. I think that this was a perfectly reasonable draft under the circumstances. Wasn't as exciting as some later drafts. Obviously, the 2021 draft was really good for the Blue Jackets. The 2022 draft looks like it's turning out fine. The 2023 draft and the 2024 draft, it's too early to say. But again, it looks like they've got some things there. You know, Keskinen in the 7th round, Pinelli, 4th round pick. You know, Gardner, 2nd round pick. Luca Morelli, 3rd round pick. Like, it looks like they might have some good value for those mid-round picks. But the 2020 draft was just kind of, it was a weird one. Everyone did the best they could. I think there are teams that did way worse at the draft than the Blue Jackets did. And really, that's all that matters, because I am, in my heart, a hater. And it's not so much that I want to win, it's just that I want other teams to lose. So not being the worst definitely counts for something. That's kind of what I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think we will do a free agent Friday. I don't know who we'll look at yet. If you have suggestions, feel free to throw them in. I might take a look at Vladislav Gavrikov, who we are all very familiar with. I might take a look at Brock Besser. I might take a look at Jake Allen, the goalie. Who knows? We'll have fun with it. But that's going to be tomorrow. We'll look at a free agent. Could they be on the Blue Jackets next season? Should they be on the Blue Jackets next season, etc., etc.? I've been Jay Foster. You can find this on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Once again, we'll be back tomorrow with another Free Agent Friday profile. But until then, make sure you stay locked on.